What's up, Star People? It is 11:11. Do you know where your Stellar Trilogy Book 3 is? I do. I got it. So, I know it's Saturday night, and I know ain't nobody paying attention to me right now in this book. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to continue to do what I'm here to do. Right? Okay, so, yay. I think, and this is a very big, hey Joey, hi. I think, and this is a very big I think I'm catching a bug. And I know where I got it from, but I'm not claiming it, but I have my juice. And tonight's read is a little, hi Raj, welcome. Tonight's read is a little more intense, and as we discovered last night, I don't think I talked about it last night, but oh snap, what happened? What happened? Just bear with me, okay? Because you know how when you feel like you're about to get, I don't like to say the S word, and you can feel it like right at the base of your spine. That's what's happening. And I'm like, whoo, Lord. Did you think I wasn't going to be? Come on, man. I am one devoted human being. When I say I want to do something, I am try as I might. Last night was a little wonky. I'm not sleepy. I just don't feel perfect. It's like there's just a lot going on. Like, I'm trying not to be sick. But anyway, we're all here. We're reading see what I'm talking about? Thank you. We're reading 2 chapters tonight because they're kind of relatively short, but they're intense. So please don't feel like you're getting off the hook because you're not. And I think in one of the previous conversations, we talked a little bit about how book 2, we talked about how the books kind of resemble the chakras, and book 2 really dealt with the sacral chakra and sacred sexuality. Well, we're about to have grown folks night tonight. So we're reading chapter 5 and chapter 6, and I don't know if everybody got a chance to look at chapter 4. What happened in chapter 4? Chapter 4, they're all up trying to figure out what this greenhouse contraption was supposed to be, and Kai realized that her family was really just didn't know anything. Like just nothing. And so they were really just like, here, you do it, Earthling. And Kai was like, y'all are all wiling. So last night, you know, Kai got a sense of herself. She was like, okay, all these smart people and they don't know nothing. Okay. And so now we're kind of in the culmination of that. I think where we left last night, they were all sitting kind of like Lara and Jasper. I were really tired because, you know, these perfect people don't know what the fuck is going on. So I just need a moment to sit, which is fine. And so Kai too was just, okay, we're all going to sit now. And it just turned out that was the best thing she could do, because she kind of did one of those mind traveling things that we sometimes do when reality gets a little wonky. Sometimes sitting your ass down is the best way to go, because your brain expands. And so that's where we are with chapter 5, expanding brain. And chapter 5 is called The Fifth Element. Love never fails. But if there are gifts of prophecy, they will be done away. If there are tongues, they will cease. If there is knowledge, it will be done away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will be done away. That's 1 Corinthians. There was a tapestry on the far wall of the enormous round room. The base color of the tapestry was an iridescent bright pink. It was almost fluorescent, but it mostly glowed. On the pink base was a golden square with 4 protruding doors. There was one on the north, south, east, and west sides of the square. Inside the square were 2 circles, one inside the other, both of which were a pink-orange color. Inside the smaller circle were pink-orange circles, of 16 lotus petals. That's right. Inside that circle was a smaller circle of 8 petals. Inside the second circle of petals were 9 perfect and interlocking triangles. There were 5 facing down and 4 facing up. This configuration made the 9 triangles look like many tiny triangles, ranging from golden pink orange to bright red as it neared the center triangle, where there was a dot. It looked like a third eye through its center. Kai was spellbound by the tapestry. She had seen it before, but she couldn't remember where. Somehow, seeing this very image, while the chant continued all around her, was a symbol of something. She didn't know what the tapestry symbolized just yet, but she knew that she would. She stood where she was for a long while, taking in the beauty of the room while listening to the room chant for her. The chant. Om Burbrava Svatat Savitur Varenyam Bargo Devasya Dio Yona Prashodayat. She opened her eyes slowly and stared at the purple vessel sitting at the center of them. The mantra from the Golden Temple. Now this is book 2 stuff, by the way. Book 2. Okay, we're back. The mantra from the Golden Temple was still playing in her head. She heard the voices like they were sitting next to her. She hadn't known what the words meant. They weren't Earth English or Tuastai, the only 2 languages she knew. They were something else, of another people. The only thing she knew of the chant was that it was beautiful, haunting, and somehow soothing, even if its meaning was just outside of her grasp. But now, staring down at the little purple vessel, it was also clear to her. The chant itself was telling her its meaning. As the different sounds played out in her head, she could see the meanings like she was being shown flashcards. Om, all of existence. Bur, coming. Buva, going. Sva, balance. Tat, isness. Savitur, bright like the sun. Varenyam, supreme. Bargo, magnificence. Divasya, divine. Dio, intellect. Yona, out of one, many. Prachodayat, inspire, enlighten, and ignite. She put the meanings together and made a sentence. All of existence is coming and going, finding balance. Our isness is bright like the sun. Our magnificence supreme, our intellect divine. Out of one, we are many. Our purpose is to inspire, enlighten, and ignite the God consciousness in all. She said the words a second time aloud. Something shifted. Her eyes closed. Her mind's eye began showing her a glow coming from the vessel. The glow morphed into a rainbow of light that looked exactly like an aurora borealis. It started small and then grew larger in the rhythm of the chant still playing out in her head. Both the chant and its meaning were playing simultaneously. Whips of the different colors of light from the aurora fanned out like gentle lightning. The ground all 3 were sitting was transforming. There were shapes being made, colors being added. The shapes and colors spread throughout the entirety of the rooftop. There were no blank spaces. All was covered in glorious pictures and patterns of sacred geometry. Her mind fizzled in and out again, but this time when it settled, she was in a giant room that had triangles hanging from its top. It was the last challenge in their wedding labyrinth. Here, sit with me, she said, sitting herself in lotus position in the very center of the middle triangle. Mahi sat facing her. He didn't know why, it just seemed like where he should sit. Perfect, Kai said. She smiled at him and he smiled back. She closed her eyes. He followed her lead. She saw herself back in the Golden Temple looking at the Maha Meru tapestry in all its gorgeous glory. Then she mentally rewound herself further back through the yellow brick corridor and out to the front of the temple where she sat in similar position listening to the temple chant. She started to sing with the 2 voices in her head. The voices were both male and female. Mahi started to hum the tune with Kai. Once he listened to it a few times in his head, through Kai's memory, he sang it too. Om Burbava Suvahat Tat Savitur Varenyam Bargo Devasya Dimahi Dio Yona Prachodhyate. They repeated this several times with their eyes closed. Now, let us sing and see the triangles divinely where they are designed to go, Kai told him with their thoughts. Yes, he said. They sang and saw what they wanted to happen until they felt a breeze blow through their hair and over their skin. They didn't stop chanting. They just kept singing and seeing together in one accord. Then they started to glow together. Their eyes were still closed, but abruptly they were embedded in a bright light. Kai didn't dare open her eyes, so she used her inner eye to see what was happening. The triangles had all found their way to their proper place, and the two of them floated through the heart center of the main triangle. As it floated down, and they floated up. When this happened, they were enveloped by a bright golden light. Then there was a tugging at the backs of their necks, where their guru crystals of their mala were pulling to connect. They floated upward toward the center of the endless cavern, as though the triangles being on the ground meant that they had to take their place in rising. They rose up, 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 mala still attached by their crystals, body still enveloped in a light bubble. They kept rising together until finally, wherever they were floating to, became dark for several beats, and then another light washed over their skin. Did we do it? She asked. Kai's eyes popped open, and she looked around frantically, half expecting to still be in Aphrodisia. She wasn't, though. She was in the same seat she had taken prior to slipping off into one of her hyper-real daydreams. She was a bit disconcerted at first, so when Jasperai and Lara finally opened their eyes, she tried to play it cool. Despite the fact that floating center of them was the purple vessel. It was held up by the outstretched arms of the amulets each of them wore. She and her husband's twin yin and yang mala, plus the gray amulet around Lara's neck. The bead strands around Kai's neck were so tight, she was afraid to move. So she sat still while trying to discern what happened. Less disconcerting was the distinct sound of birds chirping, butterfly wings flapping. The air smelled sweeter. The water in the waterfall glistened brighter. As they breathed, the pyramids appeared to breathe with them. Astounding, Jasperai said finally. Truly amazing. He didn't give the impression that he was as tight with his beads as Kai was with hers. He seemed more effortless than she felt. He was even the first to stand. When he did, each of their amulets relaxed to their more natural position as necklaces around their necks, guru beads lying flat on their chests. The vessel landed in Kai's hands. Despite her slow adjustment, she recognized that she knew exactly what to do with it. She stood and walked over to the waterfall and placed the vessel behind the diamond water. The whole thing lit up. Then something else shifted. A single stream of rainbow light poured upward from the small pool at the bottom of the waterfall. It started small, like a wire, and then spread out and up like a force. The force of light pushed through the point of glass at the top of the pyramid greenhouse and out through the other side, making the air glow. A sheer, pulsing orb formed around the entire building. Suddenly, it was warm and balmy. Suddenly, everything felt like love. Oh, Kai said, with only a hint of confidence. I don't know exactly what we did, but whatever it is, I think it worked. Yes, Lara said with a smile. Another voice forced itself through Kai's awareness. She knew it well. Damascus, book dude. The earth propagates her seeds, and in turn the seeds flourish, grow, and produce another generation. The chant works like that. It represents the fifth element, love. Not only in a spiritual garden, but in a spiritual practice. The chant expresses and propagates divine intention. All of existence is coming and going, finding balance. Our isness is bright like the sun, our magnificence supreme, our intellect divine. Out of one, we are many. Our purpose is to inspire, enlighten, and ignite the God consciousness in all. Its meaning is like the good season that prospers the earth. Fruit comes forth again and again. Like a surrendered seed is carried by the wind, we too surrender our intention into the universal intention. You are entering the good season. Plant well, he said. Kai nodded to no one in particular. Jasper, I, and Lara seemed oblivious to what she just heard. She felt lonely and weird. Tears brimmed her eyes. She had just received her instructions, and the idea scared her. She couldn't find a smile, but she found a few words. I think I know where the magnanite tree is to be planted. But for now, I think she'll love it in here, she said, to no one in particular. So that was chapter 5. I told you it was shorter, but it wasn't less intense. Now I'm gonna say this. Chapter 5, there were 2 dream sequences, and they both led back to book 2. And I think what I like about these stories is that even though murder mystery is kind of like to say about a book that kind of deals with so many different spiritual themes, but it's like a puzzle, and all 3 books have pieces to the puzzle. And so even though we're only on the 3rd of probably 7 or 8 or 9 or whatever, how many there are going to be, each book is connected like that. And so it's interactive. So you go back, there'll be times where you go back and you have to go back to book 2 and be like, wait a minute, did I miss something? You know? And so and there's always something, I guess there's always more. Hi, Glenville. So there's always something, more. And then, so you can pull things from book 2, and, you can pull things from book 3, you can pull things from book 1, and they're all, interconnected. So I think that's kind of fun. So the deepness, you actually get to do some work, you know what I'm saying? You be like, but wait. And then there's always something new to discover. And so if you have any questions about chapter 5, or you just want to go into chapter 6 and do the questions after, just let me know. I'll give you a few minutes to kind of get it together. And I'm going to drink some of my orange juice. And hi, Glenn. And hi, Monica. And welcome, y'all. Hi, Emmy. So I'm actually just going to go. Let's do that. So chapter 6 is called Edge of the World. When one jumps over the edge, one is bound to land somewhere. D.H. Lawrence said that. Everything was different. In the strangest of ways, Kai felt expanded, but stuck. When she finally collected herself enough to leave the center pyramid with Mahi and Lara, as much as she wanted to contain her excitement, she couldn't. Its transformation was epic. It was like stepping into another world. It was warm and lush. She could smell all of the different fruits and vegetables she remembered from Aphrodisia. They had brought home, Kai thought. But she didn't feel like she was looking at anything in real time. Everything was moving so slowly for her. Either she was dragging or everything around her was dragging her. She felt pulled by 2 worlds simultaneously. It wasn't the same sensation from when they first stepped through the red door. It was almost as if everything was vibrating so high and so fast. In order for her to perceive anything at all, she, unconsciously, had to break down the moments into one moment at a time. And in doing so, the moment she was in lasted infinitely. She had time, it seemed, to take it all in, every last speck of the experience, without losing any time at all. There was a glistening in the air, an infinitude of gorgeousness that surrounded everything. Everywhere she looked was a prettiness, a beauty that she had never seen before. Even the light from the sun looked like particles, as if a disco ball had exploded around them, reflecting everything a millionfold. Her skin was sparkling, like she was made of light and the sun was bouncing off of her, but shining through her. She looked at her husband with new eyes. He too was sparkling and pouring out light from the inside. His features weren't as defined. She wasn't sure where his body ended and the surroundings began. It was like he was merging with the garden and it with him. It wasn't until she felt his hands in hers that she knew he had walked toward her. "What's happening?" she asked in a whisper. But her voice felt loud, coming out of her mouth. She also felt unspeakably nervous. "Adjustments," he said in her head. His voice sounded perfect. Maybe speaking out loud wasn't the best thing to do yet. "Everything is so different," she said in his head. Talking to him that way reminded her of when they first met, how intimate it was to be able to communicate with her husband without having to speak the words out loud, and for her to hear him, and for him to hear her. It was comforting. "It is supposed to be. Everything is changing. You changed everything," he said. "Don't you mean we? I'm not up here by myself. We all contributed in some way," she said, looking around, feeling like she was caught in another of her dreams. She could feel him smiling at her, even though she couldn't actually see its formation on his face. He stepped closer to her. She took a step back. There was too much happening. She couldn't process everything fast enough. She needed to focus on something. Anything but him. So she tried to study the garden harder. She noticed that every single inch of the cold concrete or tar of the city-style roof was now covered in lush variations of greens, pinks, oranges, reds, golds, purples, turquoises, and every other color in between. Every single pyramid structure, save for the biggest one, was filled to the brim with plants. And they weren't just any kind of plants. They were the most gorgeous fruit, vegetable, and edible flowers that were already persistently fragrant and ready to be harvested. The plants were everywhere, even outside the pyramids where they hadn't planted any seeds. She couldn't even begin to wrap her mind around how that was possible, or how just outside of their building bubble was a cold world about to face the coldest of fall and the budding of winter. Under the bubble, it was balmy and almost tropical. As the sun caught her skin, it made her feel tingly. Mahi noticed. He took another step toward her. She took another step back. "Have you seen Lara?" Kai asked, looking around, distracting herself. "I have," he said. "She went inside to collect some containers for our first harvest. The others will be joining us soon," he said, staring. He was taking in her brightness, her specialness, her humanness. He stepped forward quickly enough and in such a way that she couldn't step back without stepping directly into his arms. He was so nimble about it, it looked like he was inviting her to dance. When he pulled her up into his arms to hug her deeply, he poured so much love in her direction. He wanted her to know that he was with her and that she was okay. She was reluctant at first, but after a moment she allowed herself to enjoy feeling safe in his arms. Soon after, she allowed her legs to sweep up and around his waist. It took only a moment after that for all of her awkwardness and weirdness to melt and her natural passion for him to take over. When they finally kissed, it felt more like a release. Kai felt like she had been suffocating ever since they got back, but kissing her husband made her feel like she could relax enough to actually breathe the good, free air that was already all around her. She took a long, deep breath. At the same time, Jasperai pressed her back against the flat glass wall of the nearest pyramid. He kissed her again, pressing the weight of his chest and pelvis as close to hers as he could. "Aren't you hungry?" Kai asked breathlessly. "Yes, but not for food," he said, just as breathlessly. He was ravenous. His eyes started to glow, its blue gold light without much prompt. Kai's eyes began glowing, its orange gold color. When their gaze met, their eyes locked. Jasperai walked in the direction of the door. He never stopped holding her as he walked them both through the glass door, from the garden, down the spiral stairs, through their living room, down the long hallway, and into their bedroom. He never took his eyes off of her when he purposefully missed the loft of their bed, choosing the bare wall next to it instead. He barely blinked, and they were both completely naked. He pressed Kai's back firmly against the wall, but then took his time kissing her on her mouth, her cheeks, her chin, her forehead. Anywhere on her face he found skin, he kissed. And then he made his way to her neck and shoulders, her arms and fingers. He stayed pressed against her as he explored with his mouth the parts of her his lips could reach. He stayed a long while on her breasts and nipples, although she was only a day or two pregnant. Her breasts had already begun to feel swollen. He was gentle. He kissed her breasts as though they were an exquisite delicacy, and he wanted to savor every second. By the time he had moved his mouth downward to her belly, she was so wound up and glistening with slick sweat, she thought she might explode and then slide to the floor in one heap. Mahi, for his part, was only getting started. Resolutely, he continued to kiss Kai's stomach as he used both of his hands to slide her up the wall until her hips were in line with his mouth. He then adeptly maneuvered his hands under her thighs so she had a seat in his hands and a leg rest on his shoulders. He buried his mouth between her thighs while his tongue finessed every of her most sensitive pleasure points that he wanted. She couldn't contain her moans, even as she tried so hard to, but her body felt like it would detonate if he didn't stop. She was ticking. Pressure busts pipes. "Edge," she said desperately. "Edge, edge, edge." "There is no edge on this day. It is my aim to take you over the edge to the other side. Would you like to go to the other side, Kai? I have your permission to take you there, my love?" He said all of this in her head while never stopping what he was up to. It took Kai a minute to register that Mahi was speaking to her while also trying to contain the way everything felt like sensory overload. Yes, shit, yes, Kai said. She couldn't stop it. The light from her eyes had traveled up and down her spine over and again in such a way she had no idea where it was and how to control it. She had never known Mahi to be anything but in full control of himself. In the moment, she wasn't sure if he was in control either. She liked it. She tried to follow the pleasure, but it was everywhere. It was in her and around her, even the air was pleasing her. She could even feel the molecules in her sweat, their buzzing about on her skin added to her pleasure. Mahi did everything in his power to help her release. He wanted her to spill. He wanted her divine nectar. His mouth was so warm and his tongue so precise. She felt every movement through every inch of her. The pleasure kept mounting until her mind could no longer process anything she was feeling. Her heartbeat was the only way she knew she was still alive. She had fallen over the edge. She was both falling and flying. When finally her body convulsed in release, she literally exploded with light. Her eyes opened. She was floating. Everything went from fast to slow. She could see everything within the moment. She could feel Jasperai drinking her. She could taste what he was tasting. She could hear the sound of their love for each other. She could smell the flowers and plants on the roof. She was one with everything around her, and everything around her was one with her. She felt light and then heavy as he slid her down from the wall and held her tightly in his arms. Gently, sweetly, he laid her on her bed and held her in his arms tightly. But he seemed sad. "My apologies, true love. My apologies, love. I do not know what came over me," he said. His eyes were turned down. "You're kidding, right?" Kai said breathlessly, shaking her head in hopes that her spinning brain would cooperate. She was barely sane. She had just experienced the absolute best oral sex in the entirety of her life. It was better than Sashai and Lovi combined, which was pretty impossible to accomplish in her mind. She felt loopy, but she wanted another go. She felt high and drunk, and her body was buzzing like she had eaten a pound of sugar alongside a vat of coffee. For the first time since they got back, she felt damn good, relaxed. He gave her exactly what she needed. She couldn't understand why he was apologizing. Contemplating an apology was killing her vibe. The longer she contemplated, the more sober she felt. "I would not joke of such a thing. It saddens me to say that I could not help myself of your flesh. Lara warned me that Stai pregnancy will bring out another side of my sexual nature, but I had no idea I would hunger for you and cause you to spill in such a way. please forgive me. He was speaking like he thought he broke a cardinal rule of being Stai, like making his wife orgasm so hard that she shoots out light and floats will cause his wings to be revoked, or something. Ha! Human guys would be air high-fiving themselves, texting their friends, and taking selfies already. Meanwhile, her husband was belly aching that he may have violated her. Meanwhile, Kai had to remind herself that he was Stai, and Stai did everything differently. He was really anguished about it. She treaded lightly. It's okay. I loved it. I feel spectacular. I've never in my life... Sex with you, every way we've had it, in our relatively short marriage, of course, has been wonderful. I get nervous sometimes. Still, because I want to be able to make you feel all the things you make me feel. I don't know all the rules of being Stai, but we have plenty of time, right? Please don't apologize for making me feel amazing. Please, never. It's too great to have to feel badly over it, isn't it? Now she wasn't sure. Yes, he said. You must understand that as Stai, we take full ownership of our actions in every way. When we cannot control ourselves, our actions, our passions, we know this to lead to destruction. And so we train as children to be adults of poise and grace. I never imagined to find myself to be one who could not control my urges. I cannot be sure if it is my connection to you, this earth atmosphere, or something lacking in my character that has caused such an abandon. It frightens me. I do not wish to be a lost one, he said. Don't say that. Of course you won't. Your character is above reproach. Like, seriously, by earth standards, you are a god. I do not wish to be judged by earth standards. I am Stai, he said. Kai cringed a little. She didn't quite know what to say. His words felt like a gut check. You do know that I am from Earth, right? We'll suppose I'm in this whole mix because of my earthliness. Maybe I'm here to represent Earth standards too. That hurt. Do not take yourself so lightly, Kai. You are from Earth, but you are not of it. You have seen what you are capable. You did all of it. I said nothing worthy of an insult. I spoke the truth. Earth standards are beneath you. He hesitated a moment. The truth is, yes. Kai had no idea why his words offended her so much. It made her stomach shake. She was angry instantly. It was petty for her to be angry over such a thing. She knew it, but somehow her plight for normalness was being threatened, and she hated the idea that she had no shot at a normal life. The only thing she ever truly wanted was normalcy. She hated that she was bound to this life of exception, the exact life she never said out loud that she wanted. Her head felt hot. She wanted to scream at him for being so freaking perfect, but she chose to breathe instead. He could tell that what he said wasn't pleasing to her, but he hadn't said anything untrue. So he sat with her in silence. After a while, he put his arm around her. Soon they lay quietly on their bed, together in their new home, and fell asleep. Whew! That was chapter 6, The Edge of the World. Now you know why it's called that. So, do you have any questions? I'm going to say something. So, book 2. Oh, thank you. Book 2 deals a lot with the sacred sexuality, and you get to understand, like, you meet Jasperi first off, like in book 2, and you get, like, the whole book is about their relationship for the most part. I mean, it's not the whole book, there are other things going on, but you really get to know him. And so what's going on here, it's hard to get a vibe of him. You just need to understand Jasperi ain't no punk, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's not, he's a great dude, but he's not an earth dude. So we can't judge him by earth standards, as you see. Like, the Stai people are, you know, they are of very high moral standard, whatever that means. Like, they really, like, we're talking about warriors and peace warriors at that, but they all of the different facets of what we believe is human, you know, all of those things, they have perfected them. They have evolved in such a way where even sexuality has a sacredness, and they do not take it lightly, and they all kind of have this energetic thing that they do. And Jasperi does a lot. It's called Sashai, which is like a Reiki. Yeah, there's a lot of sacred geometry, and it's like book 2 is really powerful because you get to see relationships from, like, imagine what you believe a high vibing relationship would be. You know what I'm saying? Where everybody kind of understood who they are and let each other be who they are, and there's no judgment zone, and, you know, there is no deviance. You know what I'm saying? There's no such thing as deviance because everybody is allowed to be whole. And so you really get to meet Jasper, and you get to see the dynamic between them. Like, he really is Sai, and he's, you know, he has no reason to be anything different. And then she really is an earthling, like, in this, just realizing who her family is like, oh, y'all are just, and it's great and it's fine, it's whatever, but it's something totally different when you're expected to live up to something that you're not used to. So what I like about chapter 5 and chapter 6, and I want your take too, and I want your questions. I'm talking now, so you can get your questions ready. Is that you get to see that dynamic different. Like, it's one thing to be at her, you know, on the planet of these people, and you're kind of a guest there, and it just so happens that you end up getting married to, you know, him. But it's something else to be on Earth, to be on your turf, and they're not going to change coming here, and so you still have a standard, and it might not be high. So here's this man who, you know, his standards are extraordinarily high, and they don't believe in lying, they don't mince words, they just tell the truth. And it's like, your feelings are so like, they don't have a concept of that. The truth is the truth. So I just love that dynamic, how, you know, she's doing all this work, you know, this high vibing work, and she has no idea how she's doing it. She's fixing the water, she fixed the food, she fixed the church, she's doing all this stuff. And then, you know, something as, you know, being able to connect with her husband is now, it's like, and then when she does, his reaction is like, so there's some things going on here that's, and you see it's all Kai. You know what I'm saying? Like, her world is going to continue to evolve, but she is having a hard time. She's not good with change. So do you have any questions? What was your question about sacred geometry, Raj? What was your question? You have something specific? You came in too late to know what's going on. No, you didn't, Glenn. It was just, we reading. You can ask me anything. Oh, and I also wanted to say, and again, you find out, like, book 2, really, it is, in the Stai philosophy about sex, a woman's nectar is powerful, and so, and they are not light. Like, they don't take orgasm lightly. Like, you just don't orgasm. Like, that's not something that you just do. And so when she says edge, like, it's I'm trying to, yes, book 2 deals also with the sacred geometry more. Book 2 deals with all of that. You know, book 2 is very this specific. You understand what the Mahumeru is. You get to, you know, see the tapestry that she's talking about in there. A lot of the stuff that these flashbacks dealt with, or just kind of like reintroducing you to what was going on in book 2 when she was collecting her talents. But I'm like, and then the sacred sexuality is just like it's a really, really big deal in this, and you see how they do not take sex lightly. It is not a game. Like, we are very frivolous with it. Like, we handshaking and damn near having sex. Like, just, you know what I'm saying? Hi, nice to meet you. The Stai aren't like that at all. Like they view sex as a spiritual connection, and I don't even mean necessarily to the person. Is part of their divinity, and it's part of their power. And there's like a training process. Like the kids are trained, and there is a whole like there's no marriage is sacred. It is deep. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like you are actually binding to someone, and they have this whole thing called a hayu, which is a house. But even the structure of the house is bound to these people, and so you can see in Stai the nature of a relationship, what level of dysfunction or not that the relationship is in based on how the house looks. And so you get a full, anybody walking by can see it, like it's just there. And so one of the things you see in book 2 is that Kai has to heal her mother and her father's hayu, which is essentially their house. She doesn't have to, but it's just something that she ends up doing. And you could see that on her mother's side of the house, it is absolutely pristine. Like there's nothing. It's just clean and pristine. On her father's side of the house, though, it looks like somebody is eating, just dilapidated, and it's terrible. Like it's a problem on the other side. So and then there's a line in it that represents her. It's a very interesting thing once you kind of understand how the Stai work. And so that's going back to that and coming to this in chapter 3, you understand why Jasper is tripping. It might seem like petty and what, what I'm saying, but there's they're very serious about sex. It's not a game. Like it is. And then they don't have kids all willy-nilly either. Like it's very intentional. So one of the really cool things, at some point I would like to be able to do, once we finish this book, I'd like to be able to go back and read the other ones. But you can read them at any point too if you're interested. Any other questions? Sacred sexuality is fun. It's fun because it's cool to be a human and, look at these stories and go, that's how they do it? Word? Sign me up. Any other questions? No? Yes? No? Yes? No? Yes? No? Yes? Okay. So if there aren't any more questions, I'm going to take my behind to bed. I'm going to give you 5 more seconds and then I'm going. All right, sweets. Thank you so much for joining me for another Star People story time. And tomorrow, yes, there will be another one tomorrow. We're doing this every single day for the month of August, providing I have a voice. We're doing, chapter 7. Can you believe it? We got to chapter 7 already. And it gets more interesting from here. You ready for this ride? And tomorrow, peace, love, and light to you. Tomorrow, I have a thing that starts at 11. So meditation will be moved up to 10 o'clock, 10:10, something like that, so that we can get our meditation in and I can bounce. So if you are looking to do stop, drop, and meditate, it's happening tomorrow morning at 10:10. So I shall see you mañana, either for meditation or for Star People story time. Love you madly. I'll see you tomorrow. Lovianhal Star People.